Okay, we are back, everybody. I'm so excited for our next speaker, Iselin Annonio. Let me tell you a little bit about her. So Iselin is from Silverworks Health, and she's going to be talking all about the science on why it's so incredibly difficult to maintain a new lifestyle and a simple smart plan for how you can make any change stick forever. All right, so Iselin, we're excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am absolutely thrilled to be here today talking to you guys about food, something that we think about hundreds of times a day, and the choices that we make. And so what I'm going to talk about is the food choices that we make. What is it about changing that's difficult, and creating new habits that stick for good? And so let me tell you a little bit about it. Why am I talking to you about this? So I've actually found the secret to eating whatever I want and still managing my weight. Don't shoot me. But that wasn't always the case. So I started out at the age of, I don't know, it was like 6 to 8 years old fell into ballet actually. And over the years, I actually fell in love with ballet, and it ended up being something that I did 6 days a week. And I thought, this is my dream. My absolute dream is to be a ballet dancer. And over the years of training, I continued to excel at it. And when I turned 16, I started traveling to San Francisco to train there. And I would go back and forth there during the summertime and on the weekends and that sort of thing. And then when I turned 18, I moved there. And I continued my training and started auditioning for companies. Now, as you can imagine, being a ballet dancer, there is a tremendous amount of pressure on how we look. And we have to look a very specific way. And unfortunately, I didn't quite look that exact specific way. And so I got a lot of the instructors there talking to me about needing to lose weight. And mind you, I was not a heavy person at that time. And so because you spend so much time, well, 8 hours a day or so, staring at yourself in the mirror and then having people poke at you, telling you that put this there, put that there, change that sort of thing, I actually unfortunately developed anorexia. And what I used to do in order to drop weight is I would eat half a bagel and half a cup of rice a day. Somehow I was able to dance hours on only eating that. Unfortunately, that didn't go so well for me, and my body weakened and I got injured. And it was in the middle of my auditioning series. And unfortunately, my injury was an injury it was my knee injury. I injured my knee. I needed surgery. And ended up being 4 knee surgeries later at the age of 18, my career was over. And then I thought to myself, now what do I do? Because it was something that I absolutely loved. It was a passion of mine. So I went home. I moved away from San Francisco and I went home. And I became really sad because I no longer had a direction. I no longer had, what am I going to do with myself? And so I had quit all of my exercise and I didn't know how to eat, obviously. And so what ended up happening is I started gaining weight. And it started with 20 pounds. And then it was 30 pounds. And then it was 40 pounds. And then I don't actually know how far it went. I used to just sit and eat in front of the television. And I became so saddened and depressed with myself that I stopped going out. I didn't enjoy anything that I did anymore. And I would just stay home and feel sorry for myself. And then I saw myself one day in a picture. There weren't a lot of pictures of me growing up because I didn't really care for myself very much. There's not a lot of pictures of me as I grew up, but I found myself in a family photo. And I looked at myself and I thought, I didn't even recognize myself. I didn't even know who that was. And because I didn't recognize myself anymore, I became determined to find the self that I was supposed to be and start living the self that I was supposed to be, and it wasn't in that way at all. And so what I started doing was trying to lose weight like everybody else. And I started with Slim Fast. I don't know if you guys remember Slim Fast. Oh God, this stuff was disgusting. I would drink these shakes, and I would drink them every single day. And they were horrible, but I was desperate to get that weight off, and I didn't lose any weight. And it made absolutely no sense to me. So I got off that because that didn't work. And then I tried various other ones with the same results. I could not figure out what I was doing wrong. I had no idea. So then I started studying the science of what actually works for people who are trying to manage their weight. And so what I'm going to talk to you guys today about is how can you be very clear about what do you need to do to lose weight. So I found the secret. And once I found the secret, I was able to lose weight. And I was able to continue to lose weight and start to keep it off. And that was what really surprising to me. And I didn't feel deprived, and I wasn't on a crazy diet. And so my goal for you today by the end is for me to help connect the dots for you and show you exactly what you can do to do this as well, because I didn't do anything really earth-shattering or special. I was just really consistent with what I did do. And I wanted to talk to you about that. So let's get into sort of what I want to talk to you guys about today and our food choices, and are they sabotaging us? So I want you to think for a second as to what is your favorite food, and do you feel guilty for having it? So for me, let me share you mine. Mine is, I'm actually a salty eater. You know, people usually are salty or sweetie eaters. I'm actually a salty eater. I would rather eat cheese and crackers and chips and all those salty things. But the food that makes me feel guilty for eating is actually sweet. And it is, you know, they make Oreos that are chocolate covered. Those are my thing that really make me feel like I'm doing something wrong when I eat those things, but gosh, they're good. And I feel guilty for it every single time. And so what I'm wondering for you is, are there foods that you eat that you absolutely judge yourself for? And what are those foods that we unfortunately judge ourselves for? And so for me as a health coach, people make the assumption that I judge people's food, that I judge what people eat in restaurants, that I judge what people put into their shopping carts. And I don't. I actually don't judge anybody for what they eat. And you may not judge other people either. But my question to you is, do you judge yourself? So even though I don't judge other people for what they eat at all, I judge myself for what I eat. And what does that lead to? That leads to something called the food police, right? We have our own internal food police that makes us feel that voice inside our head that's sort of deeply rooted. And where does that voice come from? Because what's interesting is that we are not born judging food at all. We're not born saying this is good or this is bad. We're not born with that. So where does that come from? Where does that sort of judgment of things are good versus bad, where does it come from? You know, you may have people in your life that it has come from. I certainly know people in my life that have made me feel guilty for doing things or not doing things. So where does that come from? It could come from the media. A tremendous amount of it comes from the media or the messages that you get out in the world. Social media, unfortunately, is a double-edged sword. It's good and it's bad. It's hard to know what the true messages are or what we really should be doing. And so it comes from a variety of places. And then it gets sort of rooted into what is our belief, what's our belief system that we're talking about with ourselves and how we relate to all of that. And so what I want us to do is sort of take a look at this picture for a second. So if you look at this picture, what sort of story is this picture telling us right now? To me, it tells me that the woman on the left, she ate all this unhealthy, or she ate all that food, and she struggles to manage her weight. The picture on the right she eats that kind of food and she looks like she can manage her weight. That would be a judgment, wouldn't it? What would happen if we flip-flopped the scales? So if we put the fruits and vegetables on the other scale with the woman who struggles to manage her weight, and then we put the unhealthy food, if you will, we're labeling right now, on the other scale, what kind of judgments will we make there? This may be so far foreign from our normal traditional belief system that we can't even come to that conclusion of what I think. It would just seem strange, seem completely strange. And so we all have this internal food police. And how do you know if you have it or not? You have it if you eat low-calorie food and you say that was a good meal. Or you eat a cookie and you say that was bad. So it's not normal for us to sort of judge everything it is that we do in terms of our eating. And what I want us to do is start to look at our own selves and figure out, am I an internal food policer, if you will? Do I do this to myself? And let's take a look to see if you might be one of these folks. You'll be in good company, I can assure you. So am I in food jail? You are in food jail if I tend to think of foods as either good or bad based on their nutritional content. I feel disappointed in myself when I splurge on food. I typically don't let myself eat. If I eat bread or starch, it will make me gain weight. If I eat something I shouldn't have eaten, sorry, you guys are, I gotta move you out of the way. If I eat something I shouldn't have or eaten more than I wanted to, I feel the need to compensate by adding exercise. Oops, let me go back. I'm not like everyone else. If I let myself eat junk food and sweets, then I'll gain weight. Can you guys relate to any of these statements right here? I certainly can relate to these statements. I hear them constantly. I work with clients constantly who are telling themselves, and I hear these things. I can't have this because of that. I can't eat white food. You know, you have this whole food, what is it, Food Anonymous. And they don't do white food. And they don't do this major food group idea. And so that sort of sets us up for judgment that if I do have the white food, then I'm bad. That is bad. I can't regulate the white food. And so it starts to set us up into a dieter's mentality. And it sets us up to the idea that the only way to be successful with this is if I'm perfect at it. And if I'm not perfect at it, then I must be bad and it's too hard and forget about it. I can't do it anymore. Okay, so I want us to start thinking about how we're judging not only ourselves, but our food when we eat them. And start to think outside of all that. Remember I said in the beginning, I can actually eat anything I want. And that sounds really arrogant, and I get that. It really does, but I really can. And I want you to be able to get to the point where you are to that place that yes, you can. It's all about choice and the choices that you make. Okay? All right, so let's talk about getting rid of the stupid food police. How do we go about doing that? There's 3 steps. Step 1. Make observations without making any judgments. So this might be challenging. I want you to think back to the guilty food that I had you think about earlier on. And as you think about that food, could you get to a place where when you ate it, you didn't judge yourself? So for me, could I get to the place where when I eat that chocolate dipped Oreo, that I don't feel badly when I eat it? Can I get to that place? Can I simply say, yeah, I ate a chocolate covered Oreo for lunch today? Can I get to that place? And really start to become aware of the judgments that I'm making. And maybe where did those judgments even come from? It doesn't say on the packaging of the dark chocolate dipped Oreo, this is a bad food. It doesn't say that there. So where did that judgment come from? And really start to take a look at that. Let's start to look at changing the tape that plays in our head. So you may be playing the tape of perfection or I shoulds, the I shoulds. Have you ever done that before? I should not eat that food because of this, because it's bad, because it will make me feel awful, for all of those kinds of things. So as we start to think about getting rid of this food police, is what is that tape that we're playing in our head? How is that setting us up to sabotage? Because remember, we're going to talk about food and sabotaging and the choices that we're making. How is that potentially setting me up to sabotage? If I am feeling badly one day, I'm going to go for what I deem is the guilt food, right? I'm going to go for that chocolate dipped Oreo because I feel guilty already. I might as well just fall into it and really feel guilty. And then what do we say to ourselves? We say, oh, forget it. I've blown this day. So I'm just going to, go for it. It's a lost cause now. Or maybe it's Tuesday or Wednesday and I'm just going to wait till Monday and I'm going to start over again. Okay. Use process thinking. So dieting thinking is actually very linear. And it's this step-by-step approach that only leads to one, that only focuses on one result. And it becomes very narrow in thinking, kind of like what I was just talking about a second ago, is if I get off track in any way, off my perfect plan, then I'm a complete failure. It doesn't leave any room for, it's black and white. It's either I'm on the plan or I'm off the plan. And it leads to feeling overwhelmed, and then of course overeating. And so what I'm more interested in is something called process thinking. So we can get ourselves out of the idea of dieting with process thinking. And the idea with process thinking is that we focus more on the journey and the learning than the result. So instead of focusing solely on the number that's on the scale, we focus on what did I learn about how I got to this place and go from there. Because each opportunity that we have each day, whether I choose to eat that cookie or not, is an opportunity for me to learn from it. I chose to eat it today. Okay, well, I chose to eat it today. Is that so bad? No, probably not. So the reason to get rid of the food police is because the food police sets us up for impossible standards. And when you break a rule, it sets us up for overeating. And that's the opposite of what we're trying to do. That to me is dieting mentality 101. Is that when I go on something, I'm not able to continue that something, and I go off of it again. And then I feel like I've done something wrong because I could not continue that something. And so what I want to do is completely shatter all of those ideas and belief systems, because they don't actually carry us into a healthy lifestyle that we feel like we can maintain moving forward. So let's talk about, remember, I'm a behavioral expert. So I want us to talk about creating habits. Now that we have started to look at letting go of some of those food policers, and let me talk about weight for a second and what the science shows in terms of weight management and eating for that matter. So in terms of weight management, the body really functions on liking to stay within a certain place, if you will, in terms of calories. And so, well, let me ask you a question. Let's do a mental question for a second. How many of you think that dieting works? Anybody think that dieting works? I'm going to keep my hand up because I think that diets work. Now, how many of you think that diets don't work? Okay. Some of you think that diets don't work either. So when do diets work? Diets work when we're able to make them a lifestyle, right? So the biggest thing right now is keto. Okay, keto works when we can stay on keto for the next 50 years. Here's the problem. Keto, being a diet, doesn't work because we can't stay on it for 50 years, right? So it doesn't become a lifestyle that we can maintain long term. And so what I want us to do is think outside of the shoulds, what everybody has told you. I should do this. Oh, you should eat like that. Oh, keto worked really well for my best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend, and so you should try it because it worked for her. It may have worked for her, but you are a completely different person. Okay? And it goes the same with healthy eating as well. If you're somebody who eats fast food every day, and I told you, you know what, I really just want you to eat lean protein and fruits and vegetables and whole grains, that would be then a diet, wouldn't it? Because the swing is such a huge shift from eating fast food every day, swinging all the way over to eating this certain way. And so when I work with clients, every single client comes up with a completely different plan, because every single person is starting from a different place. And so my job is to really give a structure and a foundation, kind of like building a house. What I'm trying to do is really build a good, strong foundation, good walls. And then you're going to build on top of that what you put on the walls and how you orient your house and what fixtures you pick. That's your job. My job is to help give you this structure. And so as you can tell that, yes, every plan will have a very specific structure, but each individual detail of every plan is going to look completely different. Okay? So let's talk about how do we actually create habits that are going to stick? Because remember, we got to start to create a lifestyle, not a diet. We got to get that out of our minds and think, no, I got to create a lifestyle, something I feel like I might be able to do. And so let's talk about habits. What is a habit? I think about habits a lot because it's what I do in my work every day. And so a habit is simply something that we do each day over and over, or over and over and over again. It can be positive or negative. So think for a second, what might be a positive habit or a negative habit? So if I went to work and I parked close to the building, and I work for a large one of my jobs is a very large organization, and I park close to the building, is that a positive habit or is that a negative habit? Well, it is positive when I'm running late for work, right? When I'm running late for work, I want to park as close as I can to the building because I got to get into work on time. But it's a negative habit if I'm taking a spot for somebody who really needs to park close to the building. Like, you know, I work in a healthcare organization. So if I'm taking a patient spot that needs to get to an appointment as an employee, then it's a negative habit that I do that, right? What about working from home? I think that probably a lot of you are starting to experience working from home. I'm certainly in that same boat right now. I work at work and I work from home. And so is that a positive habit or is that a negative habit? Well, some people feel like it's positive because they get to spend more time with their family. They get to spend more time at home. However, it could be a negative habit. For me, it ended up turning into a negative habit, and I have to be careful with working from home. Because what I noticed is that when I work from home, I eat more. Because the food is all right there. I don't have all this food at work. I'm very specific about what kinds of food I have at work, because it's way too easy for me to just open my bottom drawer and eat whatever is in there. But at home, there's much more variety, if you will, of foods that I struggle to stay away from than there is at work. So that's when it could be a negative habit. And so how do we determine whether a habit is positive or negative? Well, that's very individual, isn't it? You're the only one that determines whether your habit is positive or whether your habit is negative and whether you want to change it or not. So habits become habits when we take an action or a behavior that's repeated over and over and over again until it becomes automatic. So let me give you an example. I remember being 15 years old and I was learning to drive. Can you guys think back to when you were learning to drive? I remember this vividly this day. My dad was going to take me out to learn to drive. And I remember at that time we lived in a cul-de-sac. And we had this old diesel manual transmission. And I remember sitting in the cul-de-sac, I was sitting in the driver's seat and my dad was in the passenger seat and I was stopped. I had my foot on the clutch. I was in first gear and I had my foot on the brake. And he goes, okay, go ahead and let your foot off the brake and let out the clutch. So I let my foot off the brake and I slowly let my foot off the clutch. And we started moving at an idle pace. And you know, Idle is slow, painfully slow. We would never idle these days and expect to get anywhere quickly. Painfully slow. And yet, at 15 years old, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And so I said to Dad, Dad, this is too fast. It's too fast. We got to slow down. I said, how do I slow down? He goes, Iselin, we're going so slow. Just stop. Just put your foot on the brake and stop. Now, fast forward several decades. What's driving look like now? Well, 80 miles down the road, getting Cheerios off the floor that the kids have dropped. You can fix the radio. You can adjust the mirror. You can have a conversation. You don't think about it anymore. Why? Because it was something that I practiced on a daily basis over time, and it just became a habit. It's unconscious. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about how to move the car forward anymore. I don't think about it. It's part of your routine, part of your habit based on practice. So our habits also define who we are. So if you take a look at this picture right here, this woman is eating, can you guys tell what that is? That is actually dragon fruit. And so if you put yourself in her place, how might you define yourself as you're eating dragon fruit? So something that I think about when I look at this picture, if I were in her place, is, for me as an American, dragon fruit is exotic. So maybe I identified myself at that moment of being fun and exotic, eating dragon fruit. Or, it's not that like she's eating a Snickers bar or Skittles or something like that. So is she then defining herself as a healthy eater? That's a judgment, isn't it? Or is she defining herself as, it looks like she might be eating slowly? Maybe she's defining herself as being mindful. But she's defining herself in a certain way based on that routine and that habit right there. Think about the smoker. So the one who smokes, do you think that they define themselves as a healthy person? Is that something we could define ourselves as? Knowing that I'm a smoker, can I define myself as healthy? And so they really sort of define who we are. And unfortunately, actions and habits don't become habits by chance or by wishing. I so wish this were the case. I wish that we could sort of will ourselves into creating a habit, but it just doesn't work that way. We have to have some kind of a plan for how we're going to go about building a new habit. And so I want to talk about the science of how we actually change. So there's some elements that we need in order to be able to change, 3 of them, in fact. So over there on the right is lifestyle change. And if you think to yourself for a second, what have you started new in your life? And what did you do in order to start that? So let's say, for instance, you decided to start playing the piano. You're going to learn to play the piano. What elements might you need in order to become very proficient, create a habit, routine, lifestyle out of piano playing? What would you need? Wouldn't you agree that you would need to know some information about the piano? So you would need to know what the keys are, what the notes are, what the sounds are, sort of where to put your feet, where to put your hands. You would need to know a bit of information about the piano, right? You would also need some motivation. You're going to have to want to play it, right? Otherwise, we're not going to sit down and probably spend the money or the time in order to be able to play the piano. Now, have you ever picked up an instrument before or learned something new before and not followed through until it became a habit? Have you ever done something for like a couple weeks and then not done that anymore because for whatever reason we just didn't do it? So there's a huge gap right in the middle here of the gap between these two over here, the information and the motivation and the actual change that we will get long term. So what is that gap? Here's the gap. It's the plan. And so if I am going to decide to play the piano, I am going to have to come up with some kind of a plan for how to do that. How am I going to play the piano? How am I going to become proficient with playing the piano? I'm going to have to practice, right? And in order to practice, I'm going to have a plan for how to practice. And so that's the key to changing lifestyle long term, is in the plan. Now, I want you to think to yourself for a second. Let's switch it to health now. Let's see how this applies to health. How many of you know that exercising 30 minutes a day, most days of the week, is really important for getting those overall health benefits that the CDC talks about, right? You know that it's important to do this most days of the week, 30 minutes a day, right? We know that's important. How many of you want to be healthy and exercise 30 minutes a day most days of the week? We want to, right? Because we know it's important and there's amazing benefits we get from exercising. Now, how many of you are actually doing it regularly, right? So we know it's important. We want to, and yet we struggle to get the change. Why do we struggle to get the change? It's in the skill set. We sometimes think that just having the right information, if I just knew what to eat, if I just had more motivation, information and motivation alone are not enough to make lifestyle changes. We have to come up with the plan. And you may be wondering, what is this plan? All right, let's get to it. Here's the secret. There are 5 essential skills that we need in order to change any lifestyle. And when I start talking to clients, a lot of times what's happening is they may be doing one skill, and the skill that they're doing, they can't continue. So my job with working with people is to help you to come up with a plan together. Remember, this is your plan. I'm just guiding you through writing the plan down. Coming up with a plan with these 5 essential skills such that you can follow through. Okay, so let's take a look at this plan here for a second. They are called the SMART skills. They were developed by 2 behavioral psychologists. One of those behavioral psychologists was my mentor for many years and trained me in how do we change. And she developed these skills, and the beauty of it is she and her colleague took a look at 100 years of behavior science, and behavior science hasn't changed in 100 years. We keep doing the research and we come to the same outcome. There is a very specific way that we go through in order to change. And so the beauty of what she and her colleague did was she was able to come up with 5 skills that anybody can remember that really take us to that step of not yo-yoing anymore. Okay, so let's take a look at these. I know you're dying to know. The first one is the S, set a goal. Monitor your progress. Arrange your world for success. Recruit support. And treat yourself. So these are the 5 essential skills that we need to follow in order to change our lifestyle. And so a lot of times what I've noticed with people is that they go with set a goal and then they leave the rest. The way that I like to look at this skill set is it is a package. It comes together as a package deal. And the way that I conceptualize this is the S, the set a goal is, well, the whole package is like a table. Okay, so think of it that way. The S of set a goal is the tabletop. The MART are the legs. So the legs hold up the tabletop. So everything is sort of hanging off that tabletop of the goal. And so if we have a very solid tabletop, which is a challenge in itself, and we'll talk about that in a second, but let's say we do, but we take out one of the legs, like we don't recruit support. So now we have a 3-legged table. How solid is our table? It's starting to wobble, isn't it? Now let's say we take out 2 legs. We don't keep track and we don't recruit support. Now we have a 2-legged table. I can guarantee you that table's going to fall down, right? And so it becomes really important to think about this as a package. If it was possible to do this in 1 skill or 2 skills, that's exactly what we would do, but it's not. So the power is in 5 skills. And it becomes really challenging. The last 2 skills become really challenging for people. And so because a lot of times they're challenging, these are the ones a lot of times we don't do. So what I'm going to walk you through today is I want you guys to walk away with something. 1 small step that you're going to do moving forward today. And we're going to focus on the set a goal. So I love this picture. Change can be incredibly emotional. As you start to think about change, it can be incredibly stressful. Change can be stressful. We are in our world right now is in a change, isn't it? And how stressed out are we? Everybody is stressed out because we're in change. Same thing happens when we look at lifestyle change. We look at changing our eating or exercising or stress or whatever it is. It can be emotional. And so what I want us to do is come up with a plan that isn't emotional. That is not something that when I say set a goal, you don't immediately say, forget it. I can't set goals because they don't work. Coming up with something that you feel like you can't do so you're not having this kind of emotion. You're having positive emotion. So let's look at set a goal here for a second. So in order to set a really strong goal, there are elements of setting an observable behavioral goal. Remember, I'm a behavioral expert. So what I'm interested in action. And so anytime I set a goal with somebody, it's not a weight goal. We're not going to focus on weight in terms of the goal. What we're going to focus on, what action can I take? And the outcome of that is maybe the weight changes, maybe my mood changes, maybe my energy changes, whatever. But we're going to focus on, remember I talked about the journey, the processing. We're going to talk about the journey that we can go through to finally get to that end result, whatever that is. So there's elements, okay? There's 4 elements in order to set a really good, strong tabletop that will hold up those tables, the legs will hold up that table. Observable behavioral goal. Step 1, it needs to be specific. So let's say, for instance, I'm gonna give you a goal. And your goal that I give you is to make chocolate cake in a cup in the microwave. So that is your goal. And for those of you bakers out there, what is it that you would need in order to be able to achieve that goal? Oh, I forgot to mention, that doesn't blow up and it's edible. That's the other thing. It's got to be edible. And so what would you need? So the bakers, they know exactly what they need. They're going to tell me, I need a recipe. Okay, well, what do you need on that recipe? Do you just need a recipe? Do you just need a list of ingredients? As a baker, you know that baking is actually a science. You have to be very particular about all of your measurements. So you're not just going to need a list. You're going to need all of those measurements on that list, aren't you? You need measurements. You're going to need times. You're going to need put the dry here, put the wet here, and then incorporate. You're going to need, what kind of microwave are we talking about? What kind of mug are we going to talk about? You know, all of those things you're going to need. It's not a stir fry. You can't just dump a bunch of stuff in there and expect to get something that is edible, right? So you need a lot of specifics. So what we know about goal setting is that if we're trying to achieve that, the more specifics that we have, the more likely it is that we'll actually be able to do it. Okay, so detail, detail, detail. It needs to be measurable. And so the beauty of it being measurable is that when we add more specifics, so let's say, for instance, your goal initially was to exercise more. That was your goal. And so I said, okay, but I'm going to ask you to make it more specific. Okay, let's add some specifics. I'm going to exercise 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for 10 minutes from 5 o'clock to 5:10, and I'm going to walk. Would you agree that that is very specific? And because I added all those specifics, it naturally becomes measurable. So it sort of killed 2 birds with 1 stone with the specificity. It needs to be achievable. Did any of you guys set a New Year's resolution this year? I usually get the sense that nobody does anymore, and if they do, they usually haven't. They went, well, what are you in now? We're almost in April, so usually we're not doing it anymore. So why is it we don't set resolutions anymore? Because would you agree that resolutions are meant to help us improve our life in some way? So we set them to lose weight, exercise more, quit smoking, save money, manage stress, start a business, you know, whatever. We do it in that way. We don't do it the opposite. We don't say, you know what, I'm going to go into financial ruin. I'm going to start smoking. I'm going to gain 800 pounds. I'm going to stop I'm going to start drinking. We don't do it that way, do we? So why is it that we don't set the goal? We don't set the resolution anymore. And it's this idea right here. The idea that when we go to set the resolution, we're not able to follow through with it. So those of you who like to go to the gym, I'm a gym person. And so January 2nd, those of us who go to the gym all year round, we hate January 2nd. And why is that? Because the place is packed. March 2nd, back to normal again. So why is that happening? It's happening because people set goals that they're unable to achieve, like this little baby right here. He is struggling to make it up that flight of stairs right there. His goal was not achievable. It may take him all day to get up those flight of stairs. And so when I work with people, I talk about setting a goal that we can achieve. So not setting a goal to say, I don't exercise at all on January 1st, and I'm going to exercise 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. How long can we actually maintain that? We can't. I would rather us say, you know what, I'm going to go for a walk for 1 minute this week, because that was 1 minute more than I did last week. Hallelujah. That would be amazing. And then we build ourselves up this staircase such that we get to the top of wherever it is that we want to go, but we do it in a way that doesn't make us feel like, it doesn't make us feel as though we can't continue it past the 2 weeks. Okay, so this is where we struggle tremendously. And then the last one is that we want it to be short term, that I like us to set goals on a weekly basis, because imagine our lives right now. What I did this past week was vastly different than what I did the week before. And it's likely to be different than what I'm going to do this next week, because we are in such a state of change right now. So if I set myself a goal saying, you know what, Iselin, you are going to exercise 4 times a week for 10 minutes for the next 6 months, it's not possible, because I know that there's going to be times I won't be able to do it. So set it up going, okay, this week coming up, what do I feel like I can do in terms of my exercise or my eating? What can I do? And then pencil that in. If we don't have our goals written, if we don't have our plan written down somewhere, it's never going to happen. If we have it sort of rolling around in our head, it will never happen. So when we do this short-term goal, I like us to write it out. Okay, which days am I going to do this? And pencil them, and they can move. But the problem is if we don't write these things down, we get to the end of the week and we don't have 3 days left to exercise. There's only 2 days left in the week. So short-term, and includes all of those elements right there. Okay, so when you set a goal, it includes every single one of these. All right, I want to go back because I'm starting to run out of time, and I apologize. So what I want to do is have you guys understand that the goal piece, we only went through 1 skill. There are 5 essential skills that you need in order to move forward with changing and creating a new lifestyle. We went through step 1. You cannot do the rest of it without that tabletop. There are no legs to stand up without the tabletop. And so I want you guys to have a really strong tabletop, really strong goal. And as you read that goal to yourself, make it really specific. I want you to ask yourself 1 question every single time you set a goal. And the question is this: what is the first reaction that you notice after setting that goal? So let's say, for instance, you're going to count calories. I'm not counting calories at all. And I decided I'm going to count calories 5 days a week. And my initial reaction after, okay, Iselin, you're going to count calories 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And if my first reaction is, that feels hard, I'm not sure I can do that, I'm going to ask you to half the goal. Cut it in half. Because remember, we're doing a step by step by step by step up that staircase, because we're trying to create a new lifestyle. This is not something we're going to go for 2 weeks. We're going to go really slow. And that is totally okay. That is absolutely how this works. And so I want to make an offer to you guys, because we've only come up with 1 step so far. I want to offer us to continue this conversation such that you can come up with the rest of the plan so that you can get yourself on the right foot to create a lifestyle. I'm going to go back to this one. So I have a call to action for you guys. I want you guys to complete that goal that you set today. Be sure it fits the criteria. I'm going to offer you guys a free 30-minute breakthrough weight loss session if you're struggling with your weight. I'd love to talk to you about it. I really do view weight in a completely different way. There is absolutely no judgment. I am not a judgment person at all. I am not a dietitian for very good reason, because I do not food judge. My job is simply to help you come up with a structure you feel like you can follow through with and see success. So go to silverworks.com. Let me know that you signed in today and get your appointment. Excuse me, and be kind to yourself. Change can be very hard, and we judge ourselves a lot. And sometimes because we judge ourselves and judge the food, we create these diets again of these I shoulds. I should be eating this way. I should be eating that way because somebody said to, and it's bad to do. Just be kind. Let's just take a breath. And yes, we can find a plan that's going to work. I want to finish with one final statement. The reason we struggle with our weight is not because we can't start a plan. It's because we can't stay on the plan. That's it. So yeah, we start it over and over and over again. My job is really to help you follow through with staying on whatever plan that is. And we will tweak it as we go along. So thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure to be here, and I wish you the best, and I can't wait to talk to you soon.
Oh, Iselin, thank you so much. Oh my goodness, that was